Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone here on set with us in person. And also good evening to our live audience, our online audience. My name is Edla Kaumbi, and I'm the Executive Director of the Namibia Institute of Corporate Governance, which we fondly know as the NICG. And I am joined in the studio here by Professor Atlee and by Mr. Hosea Kambonde. And we'll be talking about AI. But before we get into that, the NICG exists to foster ethical leadership and effective leadership, and we are custodians of corporate governance, promoting good governance. And we do this through advocacy and thought leadership and capacity building. And this is why we have these Fireplace conversations. We have the Fireplace conversations as a winter series. We started in June. We talked about ESG. We focused on E first, the E of ESG, then we talked about the S of ESG. Last week, in July, we're focusing on IT. We started talking about 5G. And so tonight, with these gentlemen, we're going to talk about AI and what that looks like in the corporate governance space. But please do follow us on our social media platforms and so on, so you can know what we're busy with. Our calendar should be up on your screens right now. We have exciting events coming up. We have the Leading the Board Masterclass with a special guest we will announce soon enough. That's happening on the 6th of August. We have a C-suite executives workshop coming up as well. We have a company secretary, effective company secretary workshop coming up on the 15th of August. And our AGM is happening on the 30th of August. So please be on the lookout for these. Check your emails. We'll be communicating to you. So without further ado, the Kambonde, Professor Atlee, maybe just a bit about yourselves, your background, your involvement with AI, with you, Jose.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me, for having us. My name is Hosea Kambonde. I'm a software engineer by profession, and I've basically been in the industry for the past 13 years. So we've truly seen how technology has changed from the old cassette tapes until where we are now. So yeah, the current involvement with AI, or the breakthrough of AI, has really seen a lot of revolutionary change in terms of IT. And just a few, even yesterday, we've been working with AI platforms to try and make the solutions that we do a bit better in terms of reporting, in terms of information gathering. So yeah, there has really been a drastic change in that.
Thank you. Can you tell us a bit about you, Professor Atlee?
Thank you. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here. My full names are Atlee Munyaradzi Gamundani. I normally like to call them out because I have a cool initial AMG. So I am an associate professor by profession at Namibia University of Science and Technology. And that says a lot in terms of the space where I find myself in the AI field, mostly from the research end, which dates back as far as when I was doing my first degree. I think AI has been there already, and it's not something that's new. And of late, I've gravitated towards looking more on the application side on various domains: agriculture, healthy, education, just to name a few.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to need y'all to tone it down with the lingo today so that we all can hear what y'all are saying. So, so maybe on that, Hosea, maybe just define AI. Like, what is it exactly? And then what does that look like in terms of corporate governance? And then, Professor, you can probably add to that. And maybe benefits and risks and so on. But just define it for us a little bit, and how it helps corporates. And especially with corporate governance,
That's a very difficult one, because AI operates in so many different industries, in so many different forms, right? But if I'm to classify or say what it is, right? It's basically computers trying to mimic or yeah, trying to mimic the behavior of humankind, right? Now, uh, something I like to explain, or how I like to explain it to the guys at work, is if you have a newborn baby, the only way they can learn is through behavior, right? So once they're exposed to this behavior, that's how they get to learn. That's how they get to understand humankind. That's how they start to mingle with other people. And this is basically what we're talking about when we're talking about AI and computing, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing about AI, which I think is fundamental, is the decision-making element of it, right? So before you can make decisions, you need to be exposed to a certain behavior, which then influences your decision-making, right? So various kind of AI platforms would have different decision-making based on the information that they've basically, or the data set that they've learned from, okay? So that's the first part, the classification of AI. Now, when it comes to governance, in all simplicity, it's basically how we govern our companies, the rules and all the principles that allow us to direct our companies, right? So when you combine these two, exposing AI to the various policies that we have that help us govern these institutes, and having it assist us in terms of decision making, oversight of the decisions that we make. I think that would basically conclude the definition of AI and corporate governance.
Okay. All right. Professor, do you want to add to that?
Uh,
And maybe just add in terms of what are the potential benefits and risks for organizations?
Absolutely perfect. You did a very great job in really just laying that foundation. So, if you are looking from a corporate governance perspective, when looking at AI, you are looking now in terms of the thought leadership that offers with, especially from the NICG perspective, for example. If you're looking at thought leadership and if you're looking at what AI is capable of providing, let's say, evidence-based decision making, you are then able to analyze the data within the organization. You're able to then measure the impact that you're also doing, even when you're saying we are having corporate social responsibility. You are able also to measure that impact through capabilities such as AI, for instance. Just to highlight the first item, then one of the other benefits also looking at, in as much as it can be tied into a bit of a controversy. We normally say machines sometimes also removes the emotions. There is no bureaucracy in a sense. And there is, of course, the efficiency in a part. Of course, we can flip that and discuss it in a different angle altogether in the bias aspect. But there is also the efficiency part that we can't rule out of it as well. So I would maybe just want to stop at those two. We can always expand on the other benefits as we move along.
All right, cool. So how you defined it is really a computer that can help with decision making, that can help us manage our risks better. So it's like a human director. So maybe in future we will have a director that's computer, I don't know, Mr. AI director, who will help with decision making and do it faster and process the information better. Would that be?
Definitely.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
So just on that then, what are some of the ethical considerations? Maybe, Professor, you can start with integrating AI. What are some of the ethical considerations one needs to consider because you talked about bias just now. So what are some of the things that one needs to think about?
Right. Indeed, one of the biggest around, and one of such bias. The bias comes in models that are being used.
Right.
Process. Which data set they've been used trained on, because sometimes it's not enough. Maybe the organization needs organization practical that you are looking at, environmental aspects, all those aspects that builds up an organization as a whole, for instance. So you would want representative data sets for you to even make that evidence-based decision making. I can give a typical example.
Yes, please.
For instance, during COVID, when let's say even at a country level, nations, regions, for example, when they were making decisions to do lockdowns, for instance, it wasn't like based on some really detailed data sets or a granular data set where at least you understand these are the social constraints, these are the social norms that at least will govern the decision why we are moving towards that. Because some of those decisions were just made on a blanket kind of an approach. And if you look at that in an organization, for example, and if you are going to just make a decision because a model has been performing better in Europe or in USA, and you just want to plug and play that model in our context, for example, in an African context, in a Namibian context, that sometimes will not really provide the effectiveness that you're looking at outside, especially out of that model. And one of the biggest also dilemmas, if you're looking at some of the concerns that have been raised around AI, they seem to be a misunderstanding of some of the capabilities in as far as AI is concerned. I can take a typical example of the large language models, for instance, your ChatGPTs, your Gemini, your Copilot, for instance. If you are looking at all these models, all these technologies that we almost have permeated every aspect of our daily business operations, daily lives, for instance, we assume they are just going to do magic. Some of the prompts that we give them, we just say, explain to me about ABCD without giving context. And we say they give hallucinations. It's also we don't understand how to use them effectively. That also becomes a concern. So there is a misunderstanding on how to onboard some of these technologies, even under corporate environments or scenarios. And there is also, from a governance perspective, the regulation part of it. I think our policies are not yet really ripe to onboard some of these developments as AI is bringing them on the table. And that entails we might have to have a different approach in terms of how we are also looking at corporate governance and how we are also looking at the way we revise or revamp our policies within organizations. Just to highlight some of those maybe aspects, and yeah, we can always circle back to this further. Yeah.
I don't know if you want to add to that, but do you want to add something to it?
No, not really.
Okay.
I think he highlighted everything quite well.
Yeah, because so you bring up quite a number of things, and I just maybe want you to unpack that a little bit, because first we were talking about biases, and then we talked about the use of the AI model in terms of prompts and things like that. And if we're looking at enhancing or giving value to corporates out there who are using this, so maybe just unpack a little bit the policies and things. What are some of the considerations? What is it that organizations need to consider in terms of what are they policing in terms of the policy? What is it that they are looking at? What should they consider in the policy? What are some of the risks that they would be trying to mitigate or then optimize with their policies, if that?
Right. It's quite a lot, really. I'll try to maybe narrow it down a bit to say, fine, when it comes to the policies and how you're also looking at these technologies, you're also looking at, you have to circle back to say, what's your vision, what's your mission as a corporate, for instance? Because whatever strategy that you're also having as an organization has to inform the type of policies that you also need to revise and revamp for you to onboard some of these emerging technologies as you are actually, let's say, loosening up a bit of your tight grips in a sense. Because one of the things that's very important when it comes to policy, we normally talk these days of data being the new oil. There's an organization, you have corporate data, you have sensitive information that you need to be protecting and guard. And if you're looking at some of these models that are out there, like your chat GPTs, when you're typing up the prompt, sometimes you're uploading some documents and actually asking it to analyze. They might actually be containing some corporate sensitive information. Sometimes that gives advantage even to your competitors. And the other thing we normally say when it comes to technology, if you're not paying for it, you are actually the product yourself. And as an organization, we are also busy feeding some of these technologies. I think this has actually brought about this notion of small language models. We talk of large language models, and we now have large language model where you actually contextualize it to your organizational needs, for instance, and you just lock it there. So one of the things that you're looking at from the policy perspective, you're trying to protect your corporate data, you're trying to protect your customers, you're trying to protect even your copyrights, everything that is your crown jewel as an organization, for instance. And the other aspect, if you are looking in that context as well, when it comes to AI and the policies, and you're looking at how even as a board of an organization, for example, you are looking at how are you aligning, especially even with your sector, for example. I can look at the banking finance, the finance or the banking sector, for example, and we have a very good example in terms of our Namibian context. If you look at how Nampinsa have gone about it, to say, yes, we are not yet ripe in terms of our policies, but let's create a sandbox where we are saying we are experimenting in a very protected environment. You are not saying, no, don't use this, because I think we can't fight technology, we can't fight AI. Its time is arrived. It's here, whether we like it or not. But we have to provide an atmosphere, an environment where, as an organization, for instance, you allow your employees to experiment with these technologies as they are coming on board, and you find ways of really revising your policies based on what you are actually getting as outcomes from that. Yeah.
That's good, because that leads us into data privacy and security. And Jose, maybe you want to talk to that. Because from what you're saying is then, organizations could have employees that are uploading their things, their sensitive data and documents, because they, quickly want to draft a policy or whatever. And so the information could be out there. So how could organizations then safeguard themselves, or what should they put in place to protect their data?
It's tricky because on both ends, yes, you can safeguard, but when you safeguard the data, or you also limit whatever they're doing, that means you are also killing a sector that they can learn from, right? Yeah, because ultimately, sorry, go ahead. So the model itself, okay? Now, how to safeguard information, like Prof mentioned, would obviously be having to box it into, let's say, an AI solution just for the organization, running through an intranet, and then you create data sets for it that it can learn from, using the policies, using the behavior and all of that, right? But that then keeps it out from the external environment, meaning that it cannot or will not be able to learn from other data sets that are available, right? So obviously there is a benefit, and there's also a disadvantage to it. Now, depending on the information that is being shared, I think it would obviously be much better to contain that. Either the organization contains it, or the country contains it through its own personal AI model, which is housed only within the Namibian borders, and then having others that can then run externally or throughout the internet.
With what you're saying, it sounds like they are creating their own ChatGPT, for example. Because I'm talking about if staff members, because ChatGPT it's freely downloadable, right? For those who don't have paid models. how, because I'm thinking that's what the staff members would be using. Are you saying then should organization block that? Or if they don't, how can they be safe? Or is there a way to do that?
Look, the biggest fundamental of AI is machine learning. So every information it gets, it's learning. Okay? Doesn't matter if it's learning about you, your environment, your organization, it's basically learning. So you would then be cautious about what type of information is going out of the company or organization as to what type of information stays in. So if we are saying, for example, we have policies already, or IT policies already that say, or that limit some software, like WeTransfer, you can't use WeTransfer in a certain organization. You can't send documents or USBs within certain organization. So already that should tell you the concerns around data sharing or the movement of data, okay? So in that same light, you would then have an AI model strictly for the organization. Whatever information is already contained within the organization which doesn't go out can then be used within that AI model. And this specific individual or person can then utilize the external, obviously with greater data set or greater learning information for their own personal use. Yeah.
So right now, those organizations where staff are freely using some of these AI models, are you saying that's a problem? Is that a risk? Or is it that they should then just maybe have the policy so that everybody is maybe informed about the risks and so they understand what to upload or not? Because I don't know that organizations all have their own AI models that they've built. I don't know.
I've not come across one in Namibia yet. But yeah, and unfortunately, speaking from a software engineer's perspective, I always have to try and limit what I say because there is a programming element to it, right? I can say, fine, let's create an AI model that can learn, but not share our data. Okay, fine, that's one thing. But in the same light, let's say now you have me that is the one in charge of modeling this AI, and I somehow missed something within that code. And there is a data breach from other AI models trying to attack your system. And then you have information of either your clients or your employees being leaked out, and it gets on the dark web and something happens. So there are a lot of elements to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but we want to use AI, and we want organizations to do well and to improve. So in terms of that, how can we incorporate it, for example, in decision making, and so that we do it in a safe way, because we don't want to now get discouraged about AI and data breaches and things like that, because AI is a useful tool. So how can organizations use them effectively in decision making and things like that? How can we use ChatGPT, for example, in a way that helps us, or whatever AI tools there are out there as well? Because I know there are a whole bunch. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be nice. It's actually something I was thinking of. For example, if you look at governing institutes that govern corporate institutions such as NICG, if you come up with your own model, which basically uses or learns from your data sets of corporate governance, what to do and what not to do, right? And you then say, hi guys, we have this model. We've set it up in such a way that it learns about best practices for corporate governance, and you can use it. So whenever there's a board meeting or any of that, then that AI bot fits there and just make sure that everyone is doing the right thing. So that's one way of using it. So it would be, okay, in conclusion of that, what I'm trying to say is AI specific to the objective so that you're trying to achieve. So if it's corporate governance, AI bot that is in corporate governance.
Yeah. Okay. So in the okay. So right now, so if organizations don't have, because it sounds like something that needs to be developed, what you're saying, for the AI models that are out there, the AI packages or software, that are out there, because this is helpful. How can organizations use those, and what can it be useful, and how can they use it safely, I think, without now having to, say, design your own AI model? Or are you saying none of them are safe? I don't know. I'm getting worried now.
Okay, let me just put you at easy by this approach. One of the things I'm looking at an organizational level, for example, it's an operationalization issue where you actually say you would want to implement certain policies. They are already there on paper, they are good. But one, do you have the staff that have been trained to use some of these technologies, for example? So what certain organizations are actually doing, they are now even having these new roles like prompt engineer, where even some of the prompts that you put onto ChatGPT, they at least have certain standardized levels from an organizational perspective, because then you are protecting even the type of data that you are letting out there, as you're doing your chatting or your querying or as you're searching, or you are actually saying ChatGPT is my buddy or is my peer, for instance. So I think you might actually look at some of the skills that needs to actually be imparted to your staff members for them to be using the technologies which they're using with a bit of awareness, with a bit of some skill sets as well. I think that's very important, because sometimes we just stop at the level where we are saying, this is not good, this is bad. Of course, we have security issues, we have security concerns, we have data privacy aspects, we have all those aspects. But with proper upskilling, reskilling, we can get to have the employees also being onboarded safely to that. We can also even have in the boardrooms, as we are making the decisions about the organization themselves, to say, how do we really onboard some of these technologies in a safe way, in a protected way, where we know we have some guardrails in place, so that at least we are even accountable to the way certain operations are going to be executed. For example, you could have even certain sections that are, let's say, have the openness of using some of these open platforms, for example, to say, if there's anything that has to do with marketing, you want to research the trends and etc., for example, then you would actually find your ChatGPTs maybe being a friend around that, and you would then promote and have ways of how they can actually be used within the environment. As you can see, most of the organizations, I think they are using Office 365, and from Microsoft, we now have Copilot. It has actually already come to our desktops. And there is no way you're going to say we have to shut down Copilot. You have to have ways of teaching even your organizational assets, that is your employees, on how to really use these technologies effectively, and even how to even create prompts that are going even to reduce the hallucinations that sometimes these models sometimes produce. Because with prompt engineering, you are making sure that you precisely give ChatGPT something that is going to be very helpful to your day-to-day work, and is really in a more controlled environment, in a sense.
All right. Do you want to add something, or can we move on? All right. I think I want to open it up to the audience. If you have comments or questions and stuff at this moment. Some of you are looking rather, I don't know. Are there questions or comments or thoughts, things that you want to? Yes, sir, in the blue shirt.
Can you hear me?
Go
Okay.
ahead. Oh, yes. Go ahead.
Jochen Todd was many years in the ICT industry. AI, is it just another buzzword for business intelligence and business management, or putting business plans together? Because, I mean, the only thing that I see is it's coming a level down now that's on your desktop. And when you switch on, the first thing is you've got to go Copilot, things like that. But isn't this BI now another buzzword for AI, or AI another buzzword for BI? Because many companies had BIs where they look what the clients are doing and things like that. And then another one is the concern that I have is it's driven by Google and Microsoft. Because everybody has everything in the cloud. They already know everything about us. Now they bring it just a level down. Now the security aspect comes in. Because I mean, look at it. When you went to Pinterest, there's something, then everything on your TikTok, on everything, all of a sudden you got bombarded with the same things you Googled somewhere else.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So what is AI? Is this another buzzword? And makes us more scary and more insecure, but not insecure, but our privacy is gone.
Mm. Yeah. Okay, do you want to say something to that? Anyone else wants to comment, or before we maybe somebody else? Yes, Mr. Nikano.
Mine is a separate question. I don't know if did they answer that. Mine is a separate question.
No. You can just ask and we can then
Okay.
take it.
No, thanks a lot. And maybe I can appreciate, or rather benefit from the panel's view to help me debunk a certain myth or risk maybe that I have with AI, especially when it comes to almost delegating decision-making to a model. Mm-hmm. And that is whether these models are truly independent in their processing and in their recommendations. Is it really possible in this age where, I mean, it takes, I would assume, a lot of money, a lot of inputs to create these models, for these models really to be created without an inherent bias towards perhaps certain genders or affinities? Or do we have enough trust yet that this wave is so decentralized and so honest in a way that it can really give you a true and honest, unfiltered, unbiased opinion? That's perhaps what I would want to hear.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, let's take these two and then we can get to you. You guys do you wanna answer whether what you said about whether it's really just business intelligence or artificial? I think he answered it in the beginning earlier. Maybe you wanna just go back to that in terms of what is AI and what is the difference really, and then we can talk about bias again. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you make a very good point. And like Prof mentioned, AI has been around for a while, right? I think for me, the twist comes in to say that business intelligence, yes, it's the art of collection. Yes, it's using the data that you have and reporting back to it. But it was set up in such a way that the intelligence still came from a human aspect. So the human programming, right, is what defined the intelligence. So there was no flexibility on a computer perspective to throw out different answers, irrespective of the programming or the hard coding of the intelligence behind. Okay? So I always like to put it as a computer that can basically improve itself. It can write code to improve itself. And it can learn from its previous mistakes and correct itself. Now, the face of business intelligence was you still needed the human element to come in and program that. From previous data, we picked this up, doesn't work. Okay, let's change the code. I'm not sure if that answers.
Does that answer your question? Yeah. All right. Did you want to add to that, or are you going to continue Mr. Nikano's question?
Yeah, sure. I'll maybe just add on to that aspect also. What happens, I think you are right to say we no longer have that privacy, but it's all to do with also the digital footprint that we are creating for ourselves, because there's a trade-off sometimes when we go to YouTube, when we go to Facebook and say, no, Facebook is free and YouTube is free, for example, what are you giving out? Because this is where they are actually learning about your preferences, what you like to, and the adverts then which pops up for you, for instance. And we have actually slowly been giving out that privacy willingly, trading it all for something free. There's nothing really free in a sense. I think they had a long agenda. these big corporate companies which are in the space to say, we are going to hook you up for you to provide the information that we are going to use to train the models. The very models now that we are now talking of, okay, your chat GPTs, and they've been learning all the data that you've been throwing out there. That comes back to your question in terms of, okay, do we then have the control of controlling the bias? I think if you're looking at the discussions in the space, for example, we are not talking of explainable AI, which is one of the most important aspects, I think, a movement towards the ethical considerations, the responsible AI essence of it, where we are saying, instead of a black box kind of a setup, we need to know what are the inputs to this model that then produce the outputs. So just you typing in a prompt and just having being amazed by something that's even just coined together, and it's just amazing you in a sense. What's more important, understand the inner workings of that very model that is producing this particular output, and which is where we are having these discussions around how do we white box the black box for it to have that transparency. And one of the things that's very important, we can only control that if we are in control of the data set that is being fed into training these models, which is why, as an organization, for instance, it might be very important, like he was alluding to say, what is the content that you want that speaks to your business mandate, for instance, that you then want that model to be trained on? This is now where we bring in federated learning. This is learning that is constrained to the device itself, for instance, and you are localizing that training, and that data is not actually going to be exposed to the outside world. You are making sure you have the protection of your data within your environment. So yes, there is a way of controlling that, but there is a caveat to it as well. If you're looking at most of these models, they are not cheap even to train. This is why you find you only have the big corporate players in that space. And if you look at the companies like NVIDIA, for example, which is like, if you look at their stock exchange or their stock prices, it's crazy. And there is a lot that's needed. Just a GPU that can run a simple model for an organization. I think not even any country that I can think of in the African region, for example, can afford that. It needs a lot of resources, because you are talking of just one model like your Gemini or your ChatGPT. It has 1.7 trillion parameters that it has to run, and that's a lot of GPUs that's needed for that. So yes, there's a control, but there's a caveat. You need to have serious investments into that.
Does that help? Yeah. Thank you, sir. Oh, you wanted to add?
I think there is an important element that I would also like to mention, which is, and Prof just mentioned it, you have input and your output, your objectives, basically. So your input being your data set, and your objectives of whatever you want to achieve being your output, right? Now, AI is in the middle here, and it does not require any other interference to give out an output. But if you've defined the objective and the output, it will strongly work towards that. For example, we are all wearing smartwatches, right? Okay, we're getting there. So this already is a data set. So if someone has diabetes, for example, you've now monitored this person for 5 years, and you know there are certain spikes that happen somewhere when something happens, and they die, for example, God forbid, at a certain stage when something happens. You spend that across 1 million people, right? So these are 1 million data sets of more data sets that it can learn from. The first time around, it might make a mistake and give you the wrong answer. Second time around, maybe a bit better. But the third time around, when it combines all of that, and then it sees it learns to say, these are the patterns, this is what I should look out for. And if this happens, we are actually predicting this to happen. So there is no human element in between there, but input is there, which is a data set. Objective, keep the person alive.
Okay, yeah, I like that. I want to get to, yeah, but let's maybe allow the gentleman at the back. Ask your question, please.
Good evening. My name is Warren. I just actually wanted to ask, out of curiosity, when the AI models came out, I was one of the first people that were excited about AI. But then quickly got overwhelmed with doubt because I started wondering, is AI hackable? And what security frames actually use to keep your information protected? So as if you have an AI model operating on your personal basis, like the gentleman over here said, I want to know if they can hack your AI model. Can they then manipulate it to use or to release personal information?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. Yeah, gonna answer that.
Sure. That's a very tricky question to respond with simply a yes and a no answer. But here's what I will maybe just give to you as a bit of an explanation around that. One of the things that have been observed, let's say even with your large language models, to say you can then even ask ChatGPT, for example, to really get into its own code. And the moment you get access to that, then there's a loophole, because then you can reverse engineer, which is why if you're looking at some of the cybersecurity threats and attacks that are now being perpetrated, they have now been refined because of the capabilities that these AI solutions are able to provide. Because now we used to know when it's the typical Yahoo boy phishing email, it has some errors, for example. ChatGPT writes very good English, and someone who wants to hack you, they will just coin it in a very nice way, and it's very easy for you to fall trap into that. So the hackable part of it is we do have users that have malicious intents. Now that they know there's capabilities of asking for assistance with writing code, scripts that can, let's say, deploy a ransomware attack to your organization, they are actually going to length to do so. So it's, AI is as good as fire, which was like the new technology then. You can use fire to cook your food, and the same fire can actually even burn your house. It all depends in terms of what exactly is even the ethical stand of the user or the person that's there, in as much as even also the companies behind these technologies are also doing their frantic efforts to try and protect their models. Even you as an organization, even if you're actually having your own model that you're also developing, there is no way you're also going to leave it open. But there is the setup to say, if AI, he had already highlighted something around, if it's able to self-generate, self-learn, and which is actually one of the fears that even the technology community, research community, even users themselves are also having. Of course, we might be talking of this dystopian type of an AI, something that's gonna cause human extinction, but that's not precisely it. Of course, we do have benefits in as much as AI is concerned if it's harnessed in a more productive way. But yeah, like I said, it's not a yes and a no answer that I can actually give to you. But of course, if I wear my cybersecurity hats, we can go to depth with that one. And I can tell you there's a good and the bad part of it. And we have witnessed so many scenarios, and I can talk of, I can tell you of different scenarios where you would actually find this type of an attack has been made possible because AI has been repurposed in a sense. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes, ma'am. You introduce yourself and then go ahead. The green, both, they should be just green. Yeah, and then at the top there should also be green.
Okay. Thank you. Now you can hear me.
Yes.
AI. Okay, so my name is Anna. I'm the Managing Director of Business Financial Solutions, but I also have an academic life. And given that Professor is here, and I do find myself supporting students, especially in their research work. And what I find is almost like students are being penalized when it appears that they might have used AI.
Mm-hmm.
So there isn't really, what is the academia side doing to support or maybe to help on board the use of AI? Because AI, as we said, is here to stay. So what is it that academia is doing not to make it look like it's bad that students are rich or are going into these spheres of using AI? And maybe that also helps with other research institutions and also just any other institution. When you ask someone to run an analysis or an assessment or something, and they run a chat GPT.
Thank you. Okay.
Interesting on this topic. This morning I read something about this online papers that were presented to UNISA, and UNISA is busy developing tools to check whether this comes from ChatGPT and things like, or whether it's own intellectual writing. So with AI comes a lot of challenges, especially now in the education part, with the online studying. So I think it's a very valid point, and I don't know what the prof says about this.
So he was next, sorry, and then we can bring it back.
Hi, good evening. So my question is basically, what is artificial? What are the how do you define artificial intelligence?
Did you
what
miss
are
the beginning of the talk? Did you miss the beginning of our talk when we defined artificial intelligence? One second.
So, and what are the components?
Okay.
Basically.
All right, and then you can give to her. Thank you for your question.
I'm Helene from Nasia. I don't really have a question, rather remarks, and maybe more specifically to the Institute. This is a great conversation that we are having here. And in the absence of any regulatory control, and I think that's what has been coming out from the conversation from the beginning. Namibia has been working on its cybersecurity bill, which is not yet finalized. Mm-hmm. Now, when this conversation is happening and different aspects of AI is coming up, and one sees that we've probably accepted really that we don't have privacy anymore. Mm-hmm. Our information is out there, but what we want to have is power and control over how our data is being used. And in Namibia, basically, if I get all your data and I use it as I please, you will struggle to actually take any action against me because it's not regulated. So I'm just wondering, like, especially from the Institute side, this conversation is very good, but it needs also now to go out there. And then we need to see how is the cybersecurity bill going to play in with the security concerns we have, especially in using bots. We are already using bots. Yeah. In most of our online meetings, there'll be a bot recording because it makes the notes, the summary easier and stuff like that. So it's good to take this conversation and apply it now practically, because now we have a cybersecurity bill that may end up being finalized, but now the conversation has started and we are now aware of the gap that exists in our law to regulate this. So big ups to the Institute, and let's take it out there.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, we actually we had Cran here last time because we talked about 5G, and they did talk about, the regulations that they're coming up with, that they're designing, that they're looking into, they're having a conversation. Yes. but it is important, and hopefully we will have a better landscape and a better framework in terms of, regulating. So you wanted to answer the gentleman's question, or you want to answer the education question, and then you can define AI again for us.
Right. The question on how is the education sector onboarding AI and especially penalizing students for using AI, for example. Yeah, indeed, that's a very great question. And I can tell you this, in as far as some of the policies that you would find also even in educational institutions, they were not yet ready for these large language models. As you can even tell in terms of their time length or of their existence is within a short space of time. And if you look at the turnaround time, sometimes our policies are revised and we have that mismatch. Technology is leapfrogging. It's almost like just going at an exponential rate. And by the time we are sitting in boardrooms and deciding to say, now we have to make decisions on how ChatGPT has to be onboarded, we are not going to say, let's shut down ChatGPT even for use. One of the proponents of technology is myself, if I'm just to come from my end, and I would actually even promote my students to use these technologies. But what I'm more interested in actually is how do you also then make sure that you show the critical thinking aspect from your side? How do you also then show that you are able to even also understand how this solution that you're dealing with? So sometimes it's also a matter of when you're looking at how even ask questions. I can actually ask questions to say, I gave ChatGPT this question. This is the response from ChatGPT. Can you critique what's missing or what's really sometimes not correct here? Because there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of disinformation with some of these large language models. And this is where we normally also even talk of the hallucinations as well. And we have had scenarios where the beauty about it, we also interface with industry and try to get feedback in as far as our students are concerned to say, what is it that you would recommend for students' engagement with some of these technologies? You don't know the situation where once someone is graduated through the system, especially the students, and they come back to, when they come to industry, for example, and then you're asking them to assist a client. The client is waiting, and they now have to go to ChatGPT to assist a client. Then there's a mismatch there in terms of the skills that you are imparting to the learners. So we have to be very practical in terms of how we are also looking at these technologies to say, to what extent can you use this technology, and to what extent you as a human have to come in on board? Because in as much as you can get a response from ChatGPT after asking a certain question, it's not going to really suit the situation. You have an angry client that you're facing face to face. How do you appeal to the human side of things when solving, bringing this aspect to say, whenever someone is holding a hammer, everything that appears before them is just a nail. We just hear, oh, AI for AI this, AI that. I think this question is very right. What is AI? I'll leave it to you.
Maybe because our time is running out, and so maybe just look at, so what are, because she talked about a meeting bot and things. So what are some of the things that organizations can look at to enhance or to make governance better? Because governance is about stakeholder engagement. It's about we want to run our organization so that there's effective control, so that there's ethical culture, so that there's good performance and controls. So how can we use AI to achieve that? And then
I think I just want to mention also the academic way of creating or writing an assignment to students is how you should critique, or not critique, but query AI. Everything is well scripted. So if you can query AI like that, I think you will really get the answers you want. But the information that comes out is not always 100%, so you should be able to debate it back, which is also fun. If you're bored, you can do that. Going back to her statement, I think it's very difficult, and I think government should really start looking into it. You cannot regulate what you don't own, right? You cannot regulate what you don't own. We do not own the current systems that we basically put our information in, unless you switch off the internet or you put a firewall that blocks to say some things, but you can't really control what's going out, right? I think a member of parliament mentioned regulating AI, but you do not own any AI. So I think that's a big something that we need to look at. I don't know if we have the financial capacity to really invest in AI bots and stuff. But yeah, going back to Edla's question, in terms of regulation, in terms of improvement and governance, right? I think it can really, really improve, especially the issue that we have in Namibia with public enterprise businesses, for example, which we'll say go down because of mismanagement. For example, in Namibia and stuff. Let's say we implement an AI bot there. Would it be able to flag and say there was corruption here? The voting that was done within this board meeting was not right because the data presented or the data that I have or the data set provided indicated this with reference to the fly essay and stuff like that. So something that's very critical with AI is it backs up its information, right? With previous, with historical data sets. So if we implement AI within such governing structures, are we really going to achieve what we want, which is the mission, the vision, and the objectives of that organization, which I think we really, really can. So I think that's definitely something that we need to look at. If you look at King 5 and they implement now a new rule that there should be an AI bot on every board setup, then I think that would be brilliant.
We'll probably see Mervyn Kingston. We'll talk to him about King 5 and making that a thing. Okay. Do you want to add to that, Professor, in terms of emerging trends and how can organizations prepare and how can they use AI to run organizations effectively and sustainably?
Perfect. Yeah, certainly. I think it's also to do with preparedness as well, and also having an open mindset in as far as the approach is concerned. I would want maybe to underscore one approach for organizations, especially how they can onboard some of these emerging technologies. I think it's always important to always have this proof of concept and try to see how it aligns with your business operations. If you look at what NVIDIA is saying right now, they are talking of the world being a simulation environment. And they are right in saying so, because they have reached that stage where at least they know whatever it is which they want to produce in the next couple of months, for example, they can model. So if you look at the upcoming trends like your image presence, where you actually have these visualizations or modeling that you can do and do your simulation to test how this is going to look at. You run several thousand permutations, and it's almost as good as if from a corporate, from a board corporate perspective, for example, if you say, if you're going to implement this policy, what's going to be the impact budget-wise, and what's going to be the impact, even the customer base, how is it going to increase? You actually simulate even a decision, and you see it visually, how it's going to fall out. We do have organizations that use this concept like your serious games. It's not yet out there live in the environment, but it's still maybe on the desktop, on a computer. But you're already able to make those evidence-based decisions where you're able to visualize, oh, okay, if we are going to move or we are going to, let's say this department operates or maybe using this technology, this department operates with this technology, this is how things are going to change. You place a lot of variables. So I would say do proof of concepts, do simulations, and that helps you to have an understanding whether it's really worth it and where can you really adjust and what can you really drop in terms of onboarding some of these emerging technologies, especially the likes of AI, the likes of your digital twins, etc., if you look at it. Yeah.
So much. We've actually come to the end of our Fireplace conversations. I hope we learned something. I hope at least we know from this that it's important that we need to understand what we have. And so for organizations, it's important that you understand the tools and that you upskill your people accordingly. And so it's also important that maybe on your boards you have somebody who understands, like maybe your chief technology person to be an executive director on your board, to understand the risks so that you know how to leverage it in a way that benefits your organization, but minimizes risk to you as well. And so I hope it was helpful and useful. Our next Fireplace conversation is only going to happen on the 8th of August when we're actually going to start talking about fraud on boards. But this month we talked about IT, and so I hope this was helpful. Please do check out. We will post some accompanying and supporting resources and tools to support the conversation that we had, so you can maybe have some checklists to have for what to look at in terms of when you are onboarding AI and what risks and what to train your staff on. So I hope this was helpful, and we'll see you again on another Thursday on the 8th of August. Thank you. Have a good night.